Welcome to Recovery with Root, a podcast centered on topics surrounding mental health and addiction. Through our Advanced Recovery Institute, a new entity of the Root Center for Advanced Recovery, we are committed to research and training to elevate clinical care. We hope you find this podcast informative, and most of all, we hope that it helps improve the lives of others. Remember, we're in this together, and recovery is possible. Welcome back to another episode of Recovery with Root. My name is Margot Farrell, Chief of Staff here at the Root Center for Advanced Recovery. Very excited for today's guest. We have Morgan Tuck, GM of the Connecticut Sun, but that name may sound familiar for other reasons. She won many titles in the NCAA Championship as a member of UConn's team. She played with the Connecticut Sun, also with the Seattle Storm, and won a WNBA Championship, amongst other things. So we have someone with quite the accolade list in our presence. Morgan, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So it is Black History Month, and we are going into this month excited for this episode here, as just last month you were recognized at the Urban League of Greater Hartford Young Professionals Award for all of the amazing things that you've done in your career, both I was going to say academically, thinking back to the student athlete days there as an athlete, and a student athlete at the time, and then now into the more professional world. And I thought that it would be really interesting to speak with you about your mental health through all of that, because you've obviously been in a lot of high pressure situations and you've come out on top. So I think that our listeners, our viewers would really learn from that. So I guess just to start, give us a little bit of background about what got you into the world of athletics and basketball to start.
Yeah, I really think it's my dad, I would say, and my parents were really big on, I have a sister, she's only a year older than me. And, it was all about, we played every sport growing up. So we got to try them all. My parents put us in everything. But my dad played in college. And so I think his passion for basketball, it definitely rubbed off on me and my sister. And it was we tried all the sports, and then we kind of got to the point where we had to choose between basketball and soccer because of the conflicts in schedule. And we chose basketball, and we just kind of ran with it ever since.
And now that you've transitioned out of being an athlete and, into the working world, but still obviously working with athletes, I imagine that has to be a big adjustment as well. And, a big change in your identity. How has that been managed? Because you were just promoted, I believe it was in December, to general manager.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's very new. And so I officially, my last season playing in WNBA was in 2020 in the bubble season during COVID. And then I officially retired March of 2021, and I think it was really difficult, I would say, because like you said, you mentioned about identity, and I didn't think I was just a basketball player by any means, but when you do something your whole life that you dedicated your life to, and then when it's over and it's going to happen at some point, but when it's over sooner than what you wanted, for me, it was, anyone that followed my basketball career, I have a ton of knee injuries. My knees are so crappy and they just weren't great. And so it made it where it wasn't necessarily my decision. It was kind of I had to stop playing. And so it was a bit of this back and forth of man, if someone asked what I did, where I would say basketball player. And so you have that piece of you that, maybe that you can't do anymore. And at the same time that I'm dang, my body's failing me, right? Why am I only 26 or almost 27 and I can't play anymore, where my peers are playing, and they feel fine. So I think that it was tough at the beginning just to understand, why I was in the position I was. And then, but life hits you and you're well, I got to get a job, right? I got to figure it out. So I got really fortunate that, the Connecticut Sun, who I played for my 5 years in the league with, got a call from an owner that was saying hey, we're in a bit of a rebuild on the business side. Don't know what it's going to be, but are you interested? And I was yep, because I don't have a job. So, I think the timing worked out really well where I got to come in, and I actually came in to run our community department at the Sun. And that was so different than what I thought I was going to be doing after playing basketball. I didn't expect to be doing that. But it was hard at the beginning. Basketball work and real work are very different. I was really tired all the time. I just couldn't understand how do people work all day, every day? And then I was making significantly less money, right, at the same time. So it was I'm doing all this work, spending all this time at work, and I'm making a lot less than what I made as a player. So it took me some time to get used to what the real world is and what a real job feels like. So, it's been a few years at this point, but yeah, that beginning part, it was a bit tough.
I think that's such an important message, and so in this podcast, we focus on anything to do with mental health and or addiction. And, with your story, I think a lot of people can benefit from that, is that no matter what you are, athlete or not, at some point, we all go through changes in our life where our identity and what we know and what we associate to changes. And maybe it's a decision we made ourselves, or maybe our body made it for us, like yours. How would you say that you were able to get through that? How are you able to navigate some of that? What would your advice be to somebody else who's maybe going through a major change and suddenly their life looks totally different?
Yeah, I would say the first thing, I allowed myself to like feel it, like I didn't try to like shove the way I was feeling away. Now, I didn't like publicly, right? I think anyone on the outside thinks like, oh, it just seems so seamless and easy. And, I think for me, but with myself and my husband, it was like he got to see the emotion, right? And like I allowed myself to like feel the disappointment or just like, when you're just like, dang, like, why does it have to be this way, right? Or why do I have to go through this maybe journey? But I think for me, I did that. And then I think I always kind of went back to what I know, which is that athlete side. And, like for me, I've always been big on like, even if it's a tough challenge or it's a situation maybe we don't like, it's like, I know if I put the work in, it's going to pay off. And so that's kind of how I approached it. And I was like, I never thought I would do community, but I was like, I'm gonna find a way to kill it in the community space, right? And so it kind of like reignited kind of like my fire to like reach a challenge. And I think for me, that's what's kind of that helped me kind of navigate where I was like, dang, this paycheck looks a little different, or like, dang, I'm at work all day, or just like it was such a weird dynamic with like I played with some of the people that were still on our team that I was working for. So I think for me, it was like if I gave myself those little challenges, and then I said that probably the biggest thing too, I relied a lot on the people around me. Like I have a really good support system from my family, my friends, and I think that's what allowed me to, be successful as well as when you have people that are supporting you that are telling you like Morgan, you're not just a basketball player, right? Like you're gonna do so much more. Or like, look, I know you didn't get to play as long as you want, but this is helping you build that career sooner. So it's like I think those messages I got from kind of my kind of group of people, I think helps you get a little bit of different perspective and not maybe internalize everything. So, I think the support system is really big, but I think people, you have to be able to acknowledge how you feel and feel it, right? Don't hide it. Don't hide it or feel like you can't. Give yourself maybe a new goal or something to work toward, and then have some, try to lean on the people that you have to support you. I think those are some of the things that helped me quite a bit.
It sounds like too, you really trained your mind as a muscle over all those years. And, all I could help but think about when I was, seeing all of your accolades and stuff, and you were playing during COVID, and, you mentioned the
Yeah.
bubble year and everything. And that had to be trying on your mental health as well, and just kind of shifting your perspective and doing something you've done for so long, but so differently. I mean, you've had these experiences that, we all lived through COVID, but now you lived in it in a
Yeah.
different way, where also part of your athletic career was through COVID.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the mental toughness that you brought to the court and you brought to the gym day in and day out to get you through those times where, as you said, on the outside, it might look like it's so seamless,
Yeah.
it's going so well, but there was a lot to manage there too.
Yeah, I think, I've always been one, if, even when you're unsure, right? I think that's when COVID brought a lot of uncertainty to everybody and like every part of our lives that we never really experienced before. But I think, when you have to like find that fire on the inside, I think. And it depends what it is for people, right? It could be their family, it could be their friends, it could be a specific goal, or like it could be anything. But I think when you have that and you're working towards something, we all face setbacks at some point, whether it's a small thing or like for me through my career, I think what really helped kind of answer your question of like my mental toughness or mindset as I was a player was coming back from a lot of my injuries. Like I had 7 knee surgeries for varying amounts. And so I was always finding I had to get back to playing, right? Or it was kind of taken away from me for a certain amount of time. I had to do the work to get there. And I think those experiences are like, everything is any experience where you have to like kind of pivot maybe from your plan, but you have to work to get back to where you want to be, or you have to work to get to a different point. I think all those, like, I would think about like all the rehab sessions I went to, or like all the moments I felt really down, or all the moments that I was maybe in more pain, but like, all right, but I'm fine, right? Like my knees are all right now, right? Like, so I did the work and it worked out. So I think for me that those instances when you kind of reflect on like tough times or unideal times, when you think about like, dang, but I did this to get back. I did this and I made it through it, right? So I think those things to me helped me kind of gain this mental toughness. And I think, even when it's like a COVID situation or, anything, I just feel like if you look back at your life and you reflect on like a tough time that you had, and you're like, dang, but I did get through it, right? Like I still, I found a way to figure it out. I think those are the things that to me, like you kind of, it builds that trust maybe in yourself that even if it's a tough situation, you can deal with it, or, even if you're unsure of what it's going to be like. And so I think that's helped, those things have helped me kind of gain a strong mental toughness that I think I still carry with me and that I continue to use. And whether it's basketball related or not, like we're always going to face something. So I think those things help me kind of gain some strong mental toughness.
So you kind of keep those tough times, those negative moments in the back of your head as like, well, I got through it though. So it's,
Hmm.
one more thing that you can add to your list of things that you did overcome. And being an athlete, I'm sure, there's many games that you didn't win as much as there were games that
Yeah.
you won. You got to be on both sides of those emotions. Was there anything along the way that a coach said to you along the way, or a teammate that still sticks out to you that you carry with you to this day?
That's a really good question. Um, I think the first thing I always thought about is, it was like my high school coach would say, like, your results are based off what you put in, right? And now that's obviously more geared toward like working hard, right? He wants you to work hard. But I think I take that a lot in what I do because I think it can apply in everything, right? If obviously it's like you want to reach a certain goal, yes, you got to put the work in. But I think I also carry it with me. It's like, all right, if you want to have those like really good relationships with your support team, right, you have to put something into that, right? Or if you want to have work on your mental, right, you have to put something into that to get it. So I think for me, it's always just like a bit of a give and take, right? Like we all want certain things, or we want to improve on certain things, or we want this to get better, right? But I think we have to always have the mindset like we have to do a little work to get there, right? It's not going to be given, or I think sometimes, and I used to think this, I think we're like someone could fix it for me, right? Or like I'll say when I was, when I was really in kind of the thick of my transition from playing to kind of front office, it was kind of like I just was like, dang, like why am I feeling like this isn't good enough, right? I know I'm in a good situation and it's a great opportunity, but it was like no one could give me that feeling of like being fulfilled in my job, right? Or being fulfilled in what I'm doing in life compared to when I was playing. So for me, it was like, okay, what can I do to help me get there? And so I always take that of like, if you want something or you want to improve on something, you have to always view it as like, okay, what can I do to help? And then how can I help it get there? So that's always stuck with me even from in high school. And, I think it's something that I really try to take of you can't expect things to be given, but we can all have a little bit we can all do some work to help us get to where we want to be.
For sure. For sure. And it's like you look back at seems like you've looked at all of those instances as like maybe the blessing in disguise that you didn't know they were
Yeah.
there to be like thankful for now. And coming off of it, you now see that like, wow, this can be fulfilling as well. I have to
Mhm.
ask because people are probably seeing, they see your resume, they hear, okay, basketball, and that probably involves a ton of time
Yeah.
in the gym and on the court. What else do you do to fill your cup up outside of that? Like when you were feeling stressed, when you were feeling low, what were some things that you did to recharge your own mental health?
Yeah, the first thing I think of is like it's so simple. And like when I was playing, I played a couple years overseas in China, and it was probably like I was really isolated and I felt really low on that. And so I found a lot of comfort in like I'm a big iPad gamer. Like give me an iPad. I literally bought an iPad to play my games on it because it's bigger. And literally like if I play it's my favorite game I always play. I played it for like years and years. And I put on my headphones and I have like a playlist that I listen to and it's all my favorite songs. And so even now, like when I feel really stressed and I'm like, you know what, I need a minute, I grab my iPad and I grab my headphones. And that's like my go-to. And I feel like it gives me like just maybe 20 minutes or 30, whatever it needs to be. Like I feel like I don't have to think about anything. I can take a break. So I feel like that's something really small that I do that it does help. Like it kind of like resets and it makes me feel good. And then I say, kind of like outside, I think I like to spend time with my friends. Like I'm not the most social person, but I think when I get a chance to like kind of hang out with my girlfriends and just talk and go to dinner, it's like it kind of re-energizes me a little bit because it's not work, it's not basketball, it's not something serious, it's just like catching up. And I think my friends really, really help kind of refill the batteries a little bit and recharge them when we just get to like talk about something random or like, my group of friends, a lot of us have gotten married in the last couple of years, right? And we'll just talk about random stuff or decorations in the house, like those moments where like we just get to hang out. That really does it for me, and I think that definitely helps kind of keep me feeling pretty good.
I have to ask, what's the game?
It's called, oh my God, people are gonna like kill me. It's called Cooking Dash, and it's like
Wait, I know it's fun,
anybody.
and isn't there like, oh, there's a fire in the kitchen, and you have to like,
Yes, yes, and that's like I've been now they probably you can't maybe can't even download it anymore. I've played this game for years, and it's like if I ever lose that game on my iPad, I would be devastated. So, but it's my
forget the
go-to. I
TikTok
love
ban.
it.
She doesn't want Kitchen Dash to go away.
Yes, don't touch it. No, but it definitely is. It's been like literally it's been years at this point, and it's still like my reset when I just need like a minute to kind of to get it back together. That does it for me.
Hey, we all have something, right?
It's so random, but it does.
I was like, is it going to be Candy Crush? So at Root Center, we serve 5,500 people a day, adults and adolescents. And when I hear your story, I particularly am thinking about our adolescent population, because, you're going through a lot of changes. Maybe you're going from high school to college, and maybe you were an athlete in high school and now you're not going to be in college, or maybe you were in college and you're not going to go pro. There's so many changes that happen with your identity. What would you say to maybe the teen who hears this, who comes across to this, and they're wondering, like, what's next for me? You clearly you're on the other side. You got a smile on it now, but you
Yeah.
went through those trying times and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what life looks like after basketball. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would say to not first, like, not be so hard on themselves. Like, you don't have to have everything figured out right away, right? I think sometimes we think, oh, if I hit a certain age or if I'm out of high school, I have to do this. Like, you have to give yourself some grace. And I think that's what I maybe struggled with at the beginning of, like, give yourself a break, right? Like, if you had a friend that came to you and was struggling, you wouldn't say like, oh, I can't believe you don't have it figured out. Or how do you not? Like, you would be really nice, right? So it's like, be nice to yourself first. I think we don't do that enough. And then I think you just have to, have some trust in yourself. And that's why I always tell people, like, you have to trust yourself and be willing to take risks for yourself, and whether it might not work out, it might work out. But I think when I was younger and kind of like I always use when I went from high school to college, right? And obviously I was playing and I grew up in the Chicago area. I'm from the Midwest. And so for me to go out to UConn, I was moving away from home. It's the first time like I would have lived away. And for me, it was my sister played and she went to a school that's a little bit closer. So it was a bit of a risk for like, I'm like, ooh, how am I gonna do without seeing my parents? And for me, it was like, yeah, but think how good it could be. Like I have to take the chance, right? And then I'd say after college, I went to WNBA. And then, when I was gonna go to China, I had to be by myself. We couldn't have any other foreigners on the team. But I was like, I don't know how it's gonna be, but I'm gonna take the chance, right? Like I'm gonna take the risk. And so I think for me, things have worked out pretty well. And I think it helps when you're willing to trust yourself a little bit. So I would tell a teen, like, you're young, like you have so much life to live and like you don't have to have it all figured out. So be nice to yourself, give yourself some grace. And when you have a decision or you're trying to trust yourself, like believe in what you have deep inside. And I think if you do that, you'll end up in a really good situation.
About how long would you say it took for you? Because also, sometimes we think like we make a change and it's like, okay, well, when am I going to start to feel better? When is this going to start to feel normal? How long did
Yeah.
it take for you to transition into feeling more of a sense of normalcy of like, okay, this is my new identity. This is my new day to day.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I would say I still feel it sometimes. Like I do. And I think from, like I said, I came in business side in 2021. So, it's been a few years and obviously I've gotten more used to it because I've gotten used to work and what it looks like and what it feels like. But I'm not gonna lie, there's days where, and again, I'm not so far removed. So especially my position now, there's a lot of players in our league that I played with, that I was roommates with, that, I spent a ton of time with. And now I'm on like a totally different side, right? And of course it makes me think, I'm like, I'm not that old, right? Like, dang, like why couldn't I still be a player, right? Or like, why couldn't I still get out there? And so I think I still have those moments where I'm like, like, is this it? Is this how I'm supposed to feel? But I think, I think it's just a progression, right? I think each day gets a little bit easier. And I think once you start getting your groove and you start feeling like, okay, what I'm doing is important. And I think the thing that helped me, especially for like the athletes, I think what helps with that is I think the biggest difference when you're leaving, if you're in a team sport, is you lose that sense of like community and team, right? Like you go your whole life on a team or your whole life, like it's built in, your work is tied to a team. And so for me, when I started to feel that a little bit within my office, right, it's a different team, but when I started feeling that like community, I think that helped tremendously because I think when you grow up and play your whole life doing sports, that's your normal, right? You're not used to operating in a silo or like, it's just, and it's not so professional, right? When you're on a team. So I think finding that community and what you're doing, I think helps you find a little bit of that like joy and a little bit of purpose. But I think it takes time. Like, I don't know if it's ever going to feel like, oh, 100%, I 100% good. And I never think about it. I think it really takes time. And I think, it might take me even a little more time to feel like totally solidified in it. But I think you have to just expect that it's going to take a little progression and change is hard. Like change takes, but at the same time, I view it as if you have goals and you want to grow, you have to be willing to embrace change, right? Like if it's comfortable all the time, you're not going to grow. You're not going to get better. So for me, it's like I always try to tell myself like just embrace it, just embrace the change, embrace it, and that's why I keep trying to tell myself, but it definitely is going to take some time for sure.
Yeah, and it's kind of goes back to when you said like you have to feel things. Like a lot of times we want to just speed up through the messy parts,
Mm.
speed up through the part where we're feeling
Yeah.
a little bit icky and we want to get to the other side. And another thing I keep noticing you saying too is, that comparison, because you're not that far removed and you're dealing with other women who maybe you played with
Mhm.
them a couple seasons
Yeah.
ago. And a quote that I always loved is comparison is the thief of joy. If you're
Mm.
looking at somebody else's blessings, you're forgetting to count your own. And
Yep.
so you're thinking of that what if, and that could have been me, or that still could be me, but also you don't know the person who's maybe looking at you and saying like,
Right.
wow, I wish that was me, or that's what I
Yeah.
hope to do next. And like everybody's journey just looks a little bit different. What do you find to
Yeah.
be the most fulfilling part about what you do now?
Yeah, I think the most fulfilling part is, I think the impact that you can make on people. I think that's why and obviously it's pro sports, so it's definitely more of like a business, right? And I think sports is getting to be more of a business more than ever, especially in women's basketball, and women's sports. But I think sports is like such a fun place to work, right? Like I always tell people, like, obviously I take my job very serious. I do, but like, we work for a basketball team, right? Like we're in sports and entertainment. This is to bring joy to people. This is to put out a product that's to inspire people, right? Like we're not saving lives. We're not doing surgery, right? Like, so I think that's the part that makes me really excited about my job. And it just makes it where like sports is like such a unifier. And I think when I look back at like what the impact sports has made in my life, it's like, okay, the fact that I get to be a part of that for someone else in some way, or maybe someone can look up to me and feel inspired that, hey, maybe I can make it if I can't be a pro, or if I'm done playing, you can still have a career. Like, I think the inspiration piece is what makes me feel the best. And obviously it's basketball, so I love basketball, but I think sports is such a powerful thing and it can impact you and it can impact your life in such amazing ways. And so I just feel like even if I have a small part of that for like one person, I think that's what makes the job really fulfilling.
And what an exciting time too for you to be on that side of things in sports. Because as you're saying, I mean, especially women's sports, I think we're in a time where we're seeing popularity that we've not seen before. Where we're starting to see the same amount of numbers who are watching TV for a men's game as they are for a women's game, and selling out arenas for a women's game and a men's game. And we're starting to level the playing field. So how exciting for you to be a woman too, and to be leading an organization in a time like that. I imagine that has to be fulfilling as well, because it's speaking to a greater mission. I mean, yes, right now it's Black History Month, but right after is Women's History Month, and
Yeah.
you're a
Yep.
trailblazer in that
Yeah.
sense.
No, I think it's so cool. And it's like I've loved basketball my whole life. And I've always watched it. I've always watched women's basketball. So I've been like I always view myself, I'm like a women's basketball purist, right? Like I've always been in it. I've been invested in it. And so I think the coolest part is now seeing like the widespread investment, because I think the product has been great. The players have been amazing, right? So I think it's great when, you look at it now and like players are getting so much more attention and appreciation. And I think women's basketball in general, right, or women's sports in general, right? Like there's been so many amazing female athletes that just never got the attention, right? Or never got the TV time or the newspaper time, whatever. So I think it's just such a cool moment to be a part of something where women are being elevated and lifted in a way that we've never seen before. I just think it's awesome. Like it's such a cool thing. It's so long overdue, in my opinion. And so I think it's really cool to be in this position, right, where you get a chance to do that. And for me, especially of having played in our league, it's also, and this is a smaller subset of our players, but I think it's also like you're helping people like literally live their dream out, right? Like, and it's not always easy, but you understand like what it feels like to be drafted and what it feels like to make it to the point that you've worked your whole life for. And I think having that and then seeing how they inspire the next generation, right? I just think it's such a cool moment. And I think and the thing that's now too, it's like it's not just like the little girls that are playing, right? Like I think there's a lot of people that are being inspired by what women's sports is becoming. And it's just, I can't wait to see how it goes. Like I feel like we're like barely scratching the surface of how big it's going to be.
Right. I feel like that's just been in the last year to 2 years, there's just been a shift. And as a former athlete too, I mean, it's, as you said, it's long overdue. And it's
Yeah.
hopefully when women start to be recognized more and start to see the value that's always been there, but it's being recognized, it fuels that next
Yep.
generation. What
For
is your
sure.
goal as you go forward? I mean, you're 2 months into the new promotion. What are your goals
Yep.
going forward?
I mean, I think when I look at my job specifically, like I want to bring a championship to our team. We haven't done it in Connecticut, and so that's always the goal. And I think the main thing though is my goal is to approach my job with really, really high integrity because there's a business side to this that I think it has to be done. It's a business at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, we're still dealing with people, we're dealing with players that have dedicated their life. So for me, my goal is to always stay true to who I am and what I'm doing, and how I approach my job, and that hopefully has a positive impact in those that I work with, whether they're on our staff, our coaches, our players. I think it's a great opportunity and it's a great job. It comes with a lot of responsibility. So I just want to, my goal is to handle that in the right way and to stay true to that. And, I feel like if I do that, whether we get the championship, I mean, I definitely want championship. We're Connecticut, right? We got to win, but it's more to it than just winning. And so I think that's definitely a goal that I have for myself.
Any lasting thoughts or any piece of advice that you would say to anybody who's watching this and, is just in awe and thinks, you have a very impressive resume and they're saying, if I could just have an ounce of that, what would your words of advice be to that person?
I would say maybe like two things. I would say I think first is rely on your support system and the people around you. I know like my resume is good and all the accolades, but I didn't do it by myself. Like there's nothing that I've done 100% by myself. And I wouldn't have gotten to where I've gotten to or done the things that I did without the people around me, whether that's my family or my teammates or my coaches, like someone helped me. And so I think to not feel like you have to do it all on your own, like that there's people that want to help. There's people that are so willing to give their time or give an ear if you need to talk it through. So I'd say not to be afraid to ask for help, and rely on the people that are around you. I think you'll get a lot further with some help from different people. And then I'd say like the last thing is, to whatever your goals are and whatever you want to do, really bet on yourself to do it, right? Like I think if you really want something and you want to get somewhere, like believe you can do it and be willing to put the work in to do it. And I think that's the approach that I take and that I've always tried to take is like, okay, if I want it, I can find a way to get it, right? And you might not get to where you want to get to. Like I wanted to be an Olympian. I never made it to the Olympics, right? But I think when you have those goals, you're going to land maybe a little bit higher. So I would say, definitely bet on yourself. And when you have something in mind that you want to do, just go for it.
I think that's so empowering and inspiring. Morgan, thank you so much for taking the time. I know our viewers and our listeners are certainly going to be appreciative. And now I'm not full blown in journalism anymore, so I can be biased. So I'm going to say we are rooting for the Connecticut Sun. We are bringing home
Thank
that
you.
victory. It is a basketball state after all, right?
Yes, for sure. No, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for the time.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of our podcast, Recovery with Root. As always, stay connected with us on social media to learn about when next podcast episodes will drop. You can comment, ask questions, even let us know about future topics that you'd like to see discussed. Until next time, remember, progress is the destination.